Welcome in, everybody. My name is Travis Burkhalter, and this is my beautiful bride, Brianna Burkhalter. This is our brand new show, Happily Ever After Hours. And this is our series on home improvement, which I bet you're kind of wondering, why are they in their kitchen?
Right. So, like we said last week, we're going to be talking about the home and how we improve it physically, but also taking an inward look and into your relationship. So today, we're talking about the kitchen.
Yes.
So, babe, what's a good memory you have in a kitchen, anywhere?
Goodness, I have quite a bit, right? But I'm going to keep it real quick. We all have a bad memory in the kitchen.
That's
right?
fair.
My one
That's
bad
fair.
memory in the kitchen. I was at my grandma's house, right? And it was me and her, we were cooking in the kitchen. And I don't know, I think I wanted seafood or some sort, because I remember going to the grocery store and all this and that. And so I get the can opener, and I'm trying to open a can. I can't remember what kind of can it was, right? But anyways, I pulled the can up, and somehow it cut me, right?
Ooh.
It cut me right down the middle of my middle finger, and I still have the line to this day, right here in my middle finger.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and so I was playing with it and opening it up. Now, I'm not going to get too graphic with it, but I almost passed out.
That's boys.
It is, and I almost passed out. But that was my bad memory. Okay, my good memory is just coming into the house and smelling food. Just when we was little, my mom cooking, we always had something on the stove, and it was always nice to just smell that food after your long day of outside playing around, and then coming in and knowing, hey, I'm about to grow up.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree. And you see, like, the kitchen is going to be where everybody congregates, so you're going to see this little one popping probably in and out. But I got two memories for you. So the first one is going to be behind us, this light. Now, everybody knows when this light comes on, that means the kitchen is closed. My mom
International sign.
Yes, my mom would turn it on as soon as she finished the dishes and the kitchen was clean. That lets you know, hey, don't you come up in this kitchen and dirty it up, because then it's gonna be a problem. So that's kind of a tradition that gets passed down now. And then the second one is at my granny's house. I mean, you kind of talked about your grandma too. My granny Sue, we would, she had two dens, but every time we would always end up in the kitchen. As soon as we walked in, we would go straight to the kitchen. She had this, when I was little, she had a glass table. Now it's like a round black table, but she had a glass table, and we would all sit there and talk, play games. I would cheat we'd play card games, and I'd cheat I'm tying my shoe, but looking up in the glass to see what card I need to get. I got caught every time, but I tried. But yeah, so we were always sitting around in that kitchen, and the kitchen wasn't even big, and it'd be hot.
Everybody's just crowded up in there.
But we were just crowded up in there, just enjoying life. So the kitchen is really the heart of the home.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, our kitchen, we're talking to you guys, so we had to make sure our guests felt welcomed in a nice, beautiful kitchen, but it doesn't always look like this.
No, it's messy, just like relationships, right?
Exactly.
And so, we had to obviously do our home improvement and clean up a little bit before we started showing and sharing with everybody online. But being in the kitchen is the first place kind of where everybody goes to, just as my wife just said. When you're around, the food is cooking, you got kids usually running in and out, you tell them, hey, don't come in here, it's hot, all that stuff. And so we wanted to start this first series with remodeling of the relationship in the kitchen, which is our hearts, right? Our hearts is the main piece of what everything is derived from. Whether I'm mad, happy, or sad, it's going to come from the heart.
Absolutely. And I mean, even with remodeling, you don't see a house get remodeled and they never touch the kitchen. The kitchen is going to be one of the first places that they look at. They're going to want to change the granite tops or the cabinets or the appliances, whatever the case may be. And it's the same thing in a relationship and really in a person. If you don't touch your heart and figure out what I need to fix within myself and within my heart, there's not a lot that you can do outside of that, because everything starts there, which is, your heart is also not just the love part of your heart, but like your soul, in a sense.
Yeah, and the Bible tells us, protect your heart at all costs.
Absolutely.
I like to paraphrase. That's not basically what it says, but you get it. You get the point. right? But we want to protect that. And how to protect that is developing what we like to call, and everybody kind of know, is emotional intelligence. Now, everybody always talks about IQ, right? But EQ is just as important, if not more important, than, intelligence, right?
Absolutely.
Because we have to know how to get along with any and everybody, right? I got to know how to get along with my coworkers, right? When I coach, I had to get along with my coaches, right? When I'm teaching and educating, I have to get along with my kids. Otherwise, they're not going to listen to me. My students are going to listen to me if I'm always kind of berating them and belittling them. And then let me tell you, that was a part of me that I had to really work on in the beginning of this relationship, right? When I was coaching, I'd be aggravated with sometimes how practice went. And I'd come home, that's still fresh in me, and I would talk to my beautiful bride in a not so nice manner, right? And she, as loving as she is and as caring as she is, she'd always come in and be very easy and be like, babe, I don't like the way that you're speaking with me.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of the same thing with me in a different way because I work from home. So it's really important for me to recognize that boundary of when I'm done with work and I'm just literally going into a different room and making sure the stressors of that don't fall into, our family life and marriage. I really didn't learn about emotional intelligence till I was at the job that I'm currently at. They have with what we call a professional development class, and that was literally one of the segments was just emotional intelligence. And it was really interesting to me because for me, I'm like, oh, I'm emotionally intelligent. And we took this test, and I didn't realize that there was multiple parts of emotional intelligence. I just thought it meant, oh, I can tell when somebody's upset.
Right. Yeah. And so,
No.
this is a podcast that we're going to throw scriptures out. And so our scripture of understanding on this one is Proverbs 14:29. And in short, it tells us that he who is slow to wrath has great understanding, which that is emotional intelligence in itself right there.
Right.
And then just having a sound heart, right? A sound heart is nourishing to your bones. But envy, right? Looking at other couples, wanting what other people have, right? That is cancer to the bones, right? And so we want to make sure that we are cutting all the things that are going to hinder us from having a great God-led relationship, right, out. We want to get those things out. We want to put God into the first place where he belongs, so that he leads us and tells us, how to do this thing, right? Marriage is tough. Yes. Right? Just like remodeling a home, you got to remodel things, the way that you talk, the way that you hear stuff between your spouse, because sometimes you can feel like it's personal attack.
Yeah. And sometimes you don't even realize what you're getting into until you're in the remodel stage. You're in the kitchen thinking that you're just replacing countertops and something, and it may come out, oh, I have a leak in my pipes. So now you have to stop, put in even more work, more money, bring in a professional to help fix those pipes and those other things that you weren't prepared for. And that's the same thing in a marriage. You may think, oh, we know what we need to do when we have conflict. Well, something may throw a wrench where a person may act outside their character. What do? Do you give up, or do you figure out how to adjust and do what you need to do? It may be bringing in a professional person. It may be just sitting down and figuring out how we need to break down and work through our issues at the time. But that's part of marriage, and that's part of relationships, because that also goes with friends and family too. Sometimes you have to reevaluate where you place those relationships as well.
Absolutely. And it all begins with self-awareness.
Absolutely.
Right? Being self-aware is always, I think, something I kind of done internally, right? I played sports, so I had to know, like, how I did the last game, right? If I went out and played a terrible game and then, walked around chest puffed out like I was big and bad and I played horrible, right? That's not having very good self-awareness. My teammates would be upset with me. My coaches would be upset with me, right? But I had to really go back and look at myself and say, you know what? You didn't do this very well. And you have to do that in relationships.
Absolutely.
You always have to check yourself first. If I can check myself first, usually good things are going to come of it, because I know where I'm lacking, right? Where I'm deficient at.
Mm-hmm.
And we all have deficiencies in some area, okay? And mine was really listening. Right, mine was listening, and it's very simple. Hopefully, you guys checked out our interview with the lovely couple Richard Roots on this past Thursday. Right, we were talking about just something very simple. When I was little, and it still carried into my marriage. Right, taking the trash out. I was trash taker outer, right? Because I was the male. My mom and my sister, right? They didn't want to take the trash out, so I always took the trash out. And my grandmother, right? So I had to take the trash out. But what I always forgot was putting back in the trash bag, right? I always forgot that. And so it carried with me into my marriage. And I really didn't think it was that big of a deal, right? My mom never really said anything. She might have, but I didn't listen, right? That's the issue.
There we go.
Right? So then I get into my marriage and I'm doing the same thing. And I didn't really, register that it was an issue for her, right? But, she again, in her loving way, babe, could you put a trash bag back in the trash can? And it wasn't really like that. She'd flap the trash bag 4 or 5 times just so I know that she's doing what I should have done 5 minutes ago. But with that, right, I again go back into myself and say, I want to make her a happy house, happy spouse, happy house, right? So again, I had to check myself. It's taking the trash out, go right back to the trash can, put the trash bag back in the bag, right? Something simple like that. Yeah. But again, it started with myself, and that was a trigger for her.
Yeah. And with women, we're emotional beings as is. And so our emotional responses is a big part of that self-awareness. I recognize the older I get that my emotions and my triggers are changing. Whereas, when I was younger, in my younger 20s, I was a little less sensitive. I'll say it like that. I would hold a lot in. And so it was easier for me to deal with other people because I really didn't let people in. But you can't do that in a marriage.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
All throughout college.
You can't do that in a marriage. One, because you're with them all the time, so they're gonna see your ugly moments. But two, it keeps a wall in your relationship if you never let them see your emotional side as well. And so I had to really work on putting that wall down. But in the process of putting the wall down, I realized that sometimes I don't have control of my emotions. And where does that start? And where are the triggers for me getting to that eruption point so that I don't continue to erupt on him when it's just me stacking up multiple things that have made me upset. And so it's really important to take those times within yourself to really evaluate where you are. And it's not going to be a one-time evaluation. You're going to have to do this multiple times throughout your life because you're always changing.
Yeah. And something that just came to me is it's kind of like we were talking about just pulling pipes out, right? You could have black mold, right? And black mold is very inconspicuous for the most part, right? You don't know it's there, but you're breathing it in, right? And sometimes that's criticism, right? You're going to have criticism in a relationship. And here's the thing that I heard this week is all criticism, even though it's constructive, it's going to sting a little bit.
That's true.
It might not in that moment, right? But after a while, it festers because you're going to go and say, well, they think that this. And it just constantly eats at you, right? So you have to do a good job of really knowing how to receive that criticism, right? And then how to give that criticism, right? And again, it comes from a loving place, but it still stings. It hurts us to hear, oh, I didn't do this well, right? And so with that, I just know that for me, it was very tough to hear some things in our marriage, right? But at the same time, again, my emotional intelligence and my self-awareness was really what I wanted to upgrade, right? I wanted to make sure that those things didn't come back to hurt us and sometimes things come back and bite you in the butt. But I think one thing that we almost America, really, I can say America, but I'd say the whole world is we're losing our empathy towards not only what other people are going through, but sometimes what we're going through.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I think empathy is more than just feeling sorry for someone. I think empathy is really understanding and validating what they're going through. Even if you don't all the way understand. There's been times where he was upset about something and I didn't necessarily understand, or I didn't feel the same emotion that he did, but I felt emotion because he was feeling emotion, if that makes sense. It wasn't about the event, it was about him. And that's really what empathy is. It's not about what the situation is, but it is about putting yourself in that person's shoes to understand, like, okay, I may not be hurting, but this is hurting him.
Yeah.
So let me take a moment and put myself on the back burner to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, and that's recognizing it, right? That's something that I've grown to do a little bit better in our marriage than I think I did, obviously, when I was younger, right? I'm realizing what she's going through. I'm recognizing it. And then I am validating her emotions and not saying, hey, it's this, get over it, right? It happened, get over it, right? I can get over things very quickly. She may not be able to do that, right? So I want to make sure that she knows that even though she's having a hard time with this, I'm still here and supporting her and helping her get through what she's going through personally. Because sometimes in a marriage, you are battling yourself more time than you're battling your husband or wife. Hopefully, right?
Yeah.
In a good marriage, you are,
Yeah.
right? In a bad marriage, you probably are battling one another more than you are battling yourself. But you have to check yourself quite a bit about how you want to make that other person feel. So I really want to build the trust in our relationship, right? So that she can be vulnerable. Because if she can't be vulnerable then with me, then we all know what happens. She becomes vulnerable with someone else, hopefully never, right? But, I want to be that. And obviously we talked about going out and getting the plumber, right? Getting that psychiatrist that probably can talk to her better than what, I can. And somebody that can help her and bounce her ideas off. But again, I want to be that soundboard.
Sometimes, people get really weird about counseling. And I really think that,
it's got a bad connotation.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, we can't
there's
figure it out by ourselves.
Wrong. Yeah, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just need that middle person to listen to both sides to make you understand each other. Because, again, like we said last week, we both had lives before each other. And so learning that communication style takes work. And sometimes a counselor is just someone that can help you basically translate to each other. So it's really important, and communication is a big part of, working on that emotional intelligence, because it's not just about talking to each other, because you can talk all day, but if the person doesn't understand your language, and not Spanish, English, French, but how you talk through things, that could cause issues as well. Like, for instance, we mentioned a little bit, but he's a little bit more blunt, a little bit more matter of fact, where I am very detail oriented, and I've worked on it, but I used to take a long time to get to my point. But now I get to my point faster, but I still add a lot more detail. And so where we would have strife is I'm looking for him to give me more detail, and that's not part of him. And he's looking for me to get to the point faster, and I'm like, well, I can't get to the point till I give you all the details.
Yeah.
So don't rush me. So then we're over here fighting, and it's really, we're saying the same stuff, but it was just, we were getting to the points differently.
Not able to hear one another.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's a big part of just the communication and relationships. But going back to that is we also wanted that connection, right? We wanted to have that connection to where we could talk about things. And sometimes that connection is, I'm hearing it one way, you're saying it one way, right? But we realize within our own marriage that when we speak, we are listening to understand rather than to respond. Now, we are going to get to that point.
Now, break that down real quick, because I love that listening to understand, not to respond.
Yeah, and what it is just like most of the time when we get into a tiff, right, most couples are hanging on the balance to defend their side, right? And so not necessarily defending it, because we want to, again, like you said, validate. We want to validate what they're saying. It is possible that it's true, right? And I need to really hear them. So rather than responding and saying, oh, well, but you did this. Okay, but you did that, right? I've already got my rebuttal ready, right?
Yeah.
And what that's going to do for her is it's going to put her defenses walls up. Because again, now it's like a personal attack to her, using her words against her. And I don't want to do that, right? I want to be able to understand that in our family, Burkhalter, our T stands for teamwork, right? And so we want to make sure that we're working together as a team to solve the problem, because it's the problems that we're having it's not the issue between us, right? It's the problem. Then we want to make sure that we are working towards solving that problem, right?
Yeah.
We're two very intelligent people, and we want to make sure that we put one and one together and get two, right? And so we always, I think, work on our understanding where they're coming from, rather than to respond with vigor and respond with anger. So, again, like I said, I know all criticism in a marriage or a relationship can feel like you're getting judged. But again, if you take out the respond, I want to understand rather than respond.
Yeah.
And then when I do respond, it's coming from a place of understanding.
Right. And also, just adding this, Rand, it just came to me, the timing of it too.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
You have to make sure that you're communicating the timing of those conversations, because if I'm already irritated and then he comes and he's like, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? And I'm already like, dude, I don't want to talk about it right now. It's probably not going to come out as constructive as it needs to be, when it could have been a conversation that we had and got it squared away. Being pressured into talking about it, I'm probably going to say some stuff that's add some extra little seasoning in there that didn't need to be added, because I'm irritated already. So you have to really know your person and know, like, okay, they need a moment. Like sometimes when I get irritated, especially right now with all my pregnancy hormones, I go to the room and I just, either I'm scrolling on my phone or I'm watching TV or I'm just laying there, and he knows my body language, and he'll come in and ask if I need anything, and I'm just like, no, and he'll leave me alone. And then once I'm fine, I come out and we're good. But he could have easily be like, why you have an attitude? What's wrong with you? What's going on? You need to talk to me. And I probably would just erupt for no reason.
Yeah.
And it caused a whole thing. So you really have to know the timing of your person too, because sometimes we are ready to talk about it right then and there. And then there's sometimes where we're like, okay, we'll circle back. Or if it's one of us, like, I'm not ready to talk about it right now. So communicating that as well is important.
Yeah, and learning how to speak to your partner is very important, right? And then obviously listening. Men and women, when we say and talk, right, the way that she says something comes into these ears differently, right? And the way that I say something goes into her ears differently. So knowing how to speak with honey rather than vinegar is very important.
Yeah.
And if I talk with honey, it's soothing to the bones, right? But if I talk with some vinegar and then some snarkiness, it's going to come off as that, right? It's going to make her, again, put up her defensive walls, or vice versa.
Go read Proverbs too, because it talks about that a lot in different ways.
Yes.
So
that's kind of like what we've been reading, right? Because we want to make sure that we are doing a good job of getting the understanding into a relationship. And so we want to improve the small areas, and the kitchen is the first area that you improve because it's the smallest usually. Now, if you have a grand home, right, obviously it's going to be big, but again, it's going to be the first place. It's the center of everything, and it's where your family eats. It's where your guest comes in, and they're going to look at it. So that's the heart. When you talk to somebody, you're giving your kitchen away every time because it's your heart. And if I come in with you and I'm trying to talk to you, and it comes out ugly, right? I need to do some remodeling in there.
And I will say, this just came to me. The Lord sent it to me, I guess, because it reminded me of my mom back when, teenage years, we had chores, and one of my chores was the dishes. We would switch off, but one of the chores was the dishes. And I remember that I would clean the dishes fine, put them up, dry, put them up, whatever. But I would always forget to clean the cabinets. And she would lose. She'd be like, you didn't clean the kitchen. I told you to clean the kitchen. I'm like, this lady is nuts. I put all the dishes up. Like, what is she talking about? So I go down there and I'm like, I cleaned up. What are you talking about? She's like, you forgot to clean the cabinets. And I'm like, the cabinets are fine. And she's like, no, when you do the dishes, you clean the cabinets too. I did not get it. Didn't get it until I had kids and I saw the little crumbs that you see. And so now it's like,
mom senses, you get those heightened visions.
Yeah, oh my gosh, like the kitchen really is dirty because there's crumbs everywhere. And it's like, you have to, it's about taking care of the little things as well. So in your heart, you may think, oh, I'm good. You know, we're working through things. I've figured out stuff. But it's also looking at those little crumbs in your life
That's good.
that you hadn't really thought were a big deal.
Right. Ooh,
like for me, thank you.
I like that.
Like for me, it was working, like I said earlier, working through me holding things in until I explode. I didn't think it was a big deal because I felt like, oh, I'm handling, like I'm not putting my emotions on him or on somebody else. I'm handling it myself. I wasn't handling it.
Right.
I was suppressing it.
Yeah.
And so for me, I thought, okay, well, that's not that big of a deal. But those little crumbs, if you never sweep up the little crumbs, eventually your counter is going to be nasty. And then it's going to be hard to clean it up because you didn't clean it up when it was little. So really looking at those small things, and even if they seem small to you or small to your spouse or in your relationship or small to whoever the relationship is with, you have to be like, okay, that's something that I need to pay attention to.
Yeah, no, 100%. For me, it's kind of like erosion.
Yeah.
Right? You know, obviously we know that water can't just drop and break a big boulder, right? But over a period of time, that same drop in one concentrated area, now there's a hole, right?
Yeah.
And then eventually the rock cracks just because of the single drip, right? And that's us with how we are handling ourselves and handling our relationship. After a period of time, if we're just constantly holding it in, we're going to explode and it's going to come out ugly.
Yeah.
And that was something that I did a lot. I always kept stuff close to the chest.
Because you think you're
protecting,
shielding and protecting the other person, but really it's just gonna in the end make it worse.
Yeah, and so what happens with that is now I'm looking at my person with contempt, right? Every little thing that they do irks me, right? It just is like, dude, why are you breathing?
Listen, right? I'm gonna be real with y'all. This was me yesterday, like, and that's the thing.
Came in on something.
That's the thing about this podcast is like we're telling you things that we're also working through and working on, and also have worked through. Mm-hmm. And so that was one thing yesterday. Like I was already irritable from outside things and work and things like that, and he said one little thing. And then after that, it was like everything he was doing, including breathing, was working my last nerve.
So I just sat in the front room.
And I just didn't want to talk about it because I was just irritated. And then he finally was like, hey, are you okay? Like, what's going on? And then I broke down, of course, and cried, and we talked about it. And then I just needed some peace to calm down. But in conclusion, it was all... It wasn't even that big of a deal, but it was the fact that I just didn't want to bring everything to light in that moment, and it caused me to be irritated with him. Yeah, really for no reason.
Yeah, and that brings us to conflict resolution, which is something that everybody has to have, right? Mm-hmm. You have to be able to see the budget, right? And then you got to be able to say, you know what, this budget may be a little bit out of our range, right? And I got to pull back.
Or what can we work on first?
What can we work on and come back and do that, right? Yeah. Because the conflict resolution part of a relationship is really, I'd say, it's almost a pivotal moment, right, in relationships. Because if you don't have very good conflict resolution, on either side, right? We all know what's happening. That separation is going to happen, right? Because now we have irreconcilable differences, right? And so we just don't know how to get along together.
Yeah, because you're going to have conflict. That's going to happen. It's how you bounce back from it.
Yeah, and then really how you handle that conflict. Yeah, right? Because again, like I said earlier, usually most of the time, right? It's not the person, because I went to him, I was like, oh, I like him, oh, now I love him, right? And we have our good times, and then when we have our bad times, it's like, oh, you left the dish towel out, right? Blowing up, right? And again, it's not the person. I still like him and love him. It's the dish towel. That's the issue. You know, I want to make sure that I put the dish towel back on. You know, for us, it's putting it on the oven, right, on the little oven handle door. Making sure it's back there, not on the counter, right? If I clean the counters and I see a dish towel, it's like, oh my gosh, right? Like they never listen to me.
Yeah. It's also looking to see how you've dealt with conflict in the past, or people that you've seen. We talked about a little bit on the radio on the Black Love Club, was about looking into, you know, your parents and your lineage too. How did they deal with conflict? You know, my parents, as when I was an adult, they ended up getting divorced, but through my whole childhood they were together. But when they got divorced, I realized, like, I really never saw them fight. Like, they were really good friends. They weren't super like lovey-dovey, but I never saw them fight or anything. So when they got divorced, it was very weird to me that they got divorced, because I'm like, y'all didn't yell, scream, nothing like that. But also, conflict resolution can be that way too. It could be that you just never talk about an issue.
Now, here's the thing, too, okay? I do a lot of reading, like you guys know, because I told you last week I do a lot of reading. I read this book, The 7 Principles of a Good Marriage, something along those lines, right? And so this couple, right, everybody has a different way that they resolve conflict,
Yeah.
right? But here's the thing, they both know that they resolve it that way, okay? So if I now, right, when I used to have conflict, I used to not like to talk about it. I used to just like sweeping it under the rug. And you know what? Hopefully this passes over and everything gets back to hunky-dory, right? But I realized once I got divorced, right, that may not be the best idea, right? May not, right? And again, that's the self, right? The self-awareness and the emotional intelligence that I wanted.
And that's kind of like when you remodel a house and you just put wallpaper up.
Yeah.
And you don't really look at the bones. You just say, oh, I'm gonna just make
hole.
it cute. I'm gonna just paint the cabinets. We're gonna do like a olive green instead of the white. But then the cabinets are all rickety and they falling off. Like, you didn't really fix anything.
Yeah. And so what that does is, though, like, now I know how I would like to have our disagreements. Again, she goes to her room, right? She goes to our room. Not her room. Yeah, I have a separate room. It's 1950s. But she goes back to our room, right? And she needs a breather, right? She needs to take a beat, right? And then we'll come back and talk about it in that day, right? We're not going to let it just linger over us for 2-3 days, and the house is like awkward, and it's just like you can feel that tension. Nobody likes that tension, right? So we want to get down to the nitty-gritty. But this one couple, right? This woman, she loved to go to the mall, right? In the book that I read, she went to the mall, and the husband sat down and watched TV, and they'd come back home. They look at each other, they'd smile, and then they went about their business. That's how they got over their conflict resolution, and they were happily married for 40 plus years. Right?
Hey, what works for you works for you.
And so that works for them, right? But you have to get into that conflict. You have to know what works for you and your spouse to say, you know what, this isn't working. We may need to readjust it. Again, remodeling the kitchen. You have to remodel your relationship a little bit. Otherwise, things may just constantly get worse, and that's not what we want. We want to have
and get out.
We want to upgrade. Yeah, we want to upgrade the kitchen. We want to make sure that our kitchen is not looking like the 1950s when we're in 2024, right? We want to make sure that it is a modern-looking kitchen, and so we want to have a modern-looking relationship.
Right, absolutely.
Now, hold on, modern-looking relationship. That means going outside the marriage. That means all of that. We want, let me just pause the break.
Modern as in it makes sense to where we are currently. Yeah. As individuals and in our relationship, because you're always growing. You know, you're growing personally, and so your relationship has to grow with both people. Because if your relationship stays back here in the way that you guys once were, and you guys have grown into two totally different people, you're going to grow separately.
Yeah, because you're going to grow.
Yeah.
You change every 7 years. There's a lot of stuff I can go into that, but I'm not, because I read and listen to a lot of stuff. Now, I do use my discernment.
I remember I talked about that fun fact last week.
I do my discernment, right? I used to not really have discernment. I used to take in everything and be like, oh, yeah, that's the God honest truth, right? And I got my discernment game up. So I definitely take everything with a grain of salt, and then I do my research on it. But yes, everybody knows, should know, right? This is, I think, common knowledge that people change.
Right.
And people grow, right? You're not going to marry the same person. So if you guys have been married 10 years, it's 2024. You're not marrying the same person that's from 2014.
Right.
It's a 2014 person, 2024 person now. that you married, right? They have new hobbies that they liked and that they didn't like back then. They're exercising now when they didn't do it then. Their styles are different. So the person changes, and so the relationship has to change with the person, right? So that we can constantly do the things that we need to do.
Yeah. Like, I mean, this is random. It goes with what you're saying, but even just like the other day, I'm in here cooking with Robin, and I'm over here with Tiny Desk Maxwell on, just really in here jamming to some jazz. Like, I sure want to go listen to some jazz on the lawn. That would have not been me 5 years ago. Right. But I was just like, I'm in this mellow state, and I like it, and I like where I'm going. And so that's something little, but it just shows that you change a little, not a little bit, you change a lot over time. And so all the things that we're talking about and that we'll continue to be talking about are things that really help you continue to shape yourself as you grow, and things that you have to do more than once.
Yeah, now, this also just came to me, right? Also let your person know that you are not the person you were 10 years ago.
You have to communicate.
You got to communicate that. Again, you may not have liked flowers back then, right? You was like, oh, I hate a flower, right? But you seen it one day and you was like, man, I really wish my person
never gets me flowers anything now. Like,
like, did he do
like
that?
Flowers.
You know what I mean? So you have to let people know that, hey, you know what? I like something, right? Because again, closed mouth don't get fed. I didn't learn a lot from my dad, but that's one thing that has been stuck with me. Hey, closed mouth don't get fed. Closed mouth don't get fed, son. That's what he said every time. So you have to be able to let people know where you're at, and then really, I think also where you're going. Right? Yeah. You have to put a vision out for your family. And again, a remodeling of the kitchen is putting a vision out. Hey, this is what we like.
Yeah. So, she's talking to me, talking about make some peanut butter and jelly, because, you're going to have those other people that need needs too, but you got to remember to put your relationship first as well. And
again, talking about what, you like. She didn't like peanut butter jellies 4 months ago, right? Now she eats peanut butter jelly every single day, right? And so that's something that we learned with her. She voices what she likes and she voices what she doesn't like at 2 years old. So we're glad that she does do that. But you also, in that relationship, you got to look for the positive interactions, right? We know that every day is not going to be hunky-dory, right? And we know that every day the kitchen is not going to look as clean as it's looking right now, right? There's going to be dishes everywhere. There's going to be crumbs everywhere. But you have to look for the good in your relationship.
Absolutely. You got to take those moments and really give yourself that grace to say, I'm going to do the one thing today. So when it comes to the metaphor, the analogy of a kitchen, okay, your kitchen is a hot mess. What's one thing you can do today? Let me empty out the dishes in the dishwasher. Just that one thing may be enough. And it's the same thing in a relationship. You may be going through a hard time right now in your marriage, and it may not all just be between you. It may just be outside stuff, financial stuff, sickness, whatever the case may be. It may be a lot going on, but taking that moment and saying, okay, what's the one thing that we can work on today? Or what's the one thing that we're grateful for today? There's days that it's tough, life is tough. And we go through the same things that you guys go through, but we stop and we, say like, hey, I'm thankful for you.
Yeah.
Or we stop and we'll cuddle on the couch at 1 o'clock in the morning watching shows, knowing we got to get up in the morning. But we're like,
it's a long day, but you know what?
We're going to watch a show together and enjoy each other's company and not talk about none of the nonsense going on.
Yeah.
And that's the one, and that's looking for something good, a positive interaction, because life can get you into a state of, that depression or anxiety or just stress. Mm-hmm. And you forget to take those moments to be thankful that you're still here. And there's a reason you're still here.
Yeah. And, and it's also developing something within your marriage, right? For us, we do a couple of things, right? You have to talk about finances, right? And you got to know where the money's going. You got to know how to put your places. So our positive interactions is Tuesday, State of the Family Union address, right? Funny during election time, but I took
it. It was before the election.
But I took it and I spun it, right? Because we need to look at it, right? We need to see where our money's at. We want that, the nest egg to grow. And then on Wednesdays is God's time, right? And I look forward to Wednesdays because we're going to watch Pastor Darius Daniels and his Thrive series on YouTube. And then before we go to bed, we're going to have almost like a dance party, right? We put on
worship time.
And worship
sometimes
time.
we be in here crying, boy.
Yeah. But again, that's that positive interaction, and we look for it because it's our calendar. You have to put it on there, right? You got to set time for it. Sometimes you have to set time for the things you want to do, right? Because time is relevant, and it can sneak up on you. So if it's not in a calendar, or if it's not on your text thread that you guys are texting back and forth that hey, you're going to do this, then you're missing out on some things that you probably should put into your relationship.
Yeah, and I was going to say too, for the parents watching, it's really important too that your kids see it too. Robin, not necessarily the State of the Union part because she doesn't need to know about all finance stuff, but as far as our Wednesdays, our worship, she's right there with us. She's in there and she has her own worship time and dancing and praise the Lord, thank you Jesus, whatever she feel like saying. And it's putting seeds in her that when she's an adult, she's like, I remember when my parents used to have this time, and it's setting instead of emotional bondage, it's setting that spiritual foundation for her, so that when she becomes an adult, she can figure out what it looks like for her. So making sure that your relationship, if you bring children into your relationship, that you recognize that they're looking to you as well. And so it's okay for you. You don't have to sugarcoat it like mommy and daddy never fight, but it's important for them to also see that resolution and to also see you guys love on each other in those hard moments.
Yeah, that's I think, most important thing. I want them to be when they're 14 and he's 5 years old, so 19. I want them Mom, stop kissing Dad. Dad's not kissing me. I want them to see that, right? Because I want them to know that I love her dearly and I'll go through a brick wall for her. But everybody doesn't have that, right? But you can be the catalyst for that.
Yeah.
And I think that's really kind of what we want to get down to is really helping other people see that, hey, we're not perfect. We're going to keep it real, raw, and authentic. We're going to keep bringing that in here. Obviously, that's why we're in the kitchen. That's why we're doing our happily ever after hours right now.
You never know where we're going to be.
Yeah, and you don't know who's going to pop up, right? But
probably this one.
This one. But we might have somebody else. You never know. And so we just want to make sure that we are doing the best that we can with what we have, right? And we want to make sure that if there's anything in this that we have said, we want to make sure that you guys have it and that you can go back and watch it or just listen to it on the go.
Yeah, so thank you guys so much for joining us on Happily Ever After Hours. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. We appreciate you guys. Don't forget to subscribe or follow us on Facebook at Travis and Bree People of Hope. And until next time.
Yeah, and if there's anything that you got out of this, please share it. Share it.
And comment on this video. We want to hear back from you guys too.
Yeah, what you would like, what you liked about it, what you don't like about it, right? Because we need all the interaction that we can get. But until next time, peace, love, and happiness.
Bye, guys. You want to say bye?
So I kind of lapsed. Think of it, I was going to let it roll back into there.
It'll come back to me in a second.
Welcome in, everybody. This is our brand new podcast series, Happily, Why didn't you put it on there? It's the H's. What is it?
Happily Ever After Hours.
Happily Ever After Hours. Happily Ever After Hours. Welcome in, everybody. My name is Travis Burkhalter, and this is my beautiful bride. You just got it. My name is Travis Burkhalter, and this is my beautiful bride, Brianna Burkhalter. This is our brand new series, Happily Ever After Hours with... Gosh, dang it. It's not even a series. This is the show.